All right, so we're diving into these Kamala Harris rally transcripts this week, all 9 of them from across the U.S. Should be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Gives us a feel for the campaign on the ground, not just the prepared speeches.
Exactly, like
Uh,
we're right there with the crowd. And speaking of the crowd, I noticed "we're not going back" comes up a lot.
It's like their mantra. Almost every speaker uses it, trying to get voters to think bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's not just about Harris versus, well,
Right, it's progress versus, as they put it, going back. But they're not shying away from calling people out. Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, their names are everywhere.
for sure. And this is where it gets interesting. They keep implying those two are, well, a little strange.
Yeah, several speakers, even Governor Walz, use the word weird. Makes you wonder, are they trying to tap into something there? Maybe with undecided voters?
Could be, like, appealing to people who want stability.
One rally even had a "he's a weirdo" chant going. Not exactly traditional campaigning.
True, true. Does that actually work, though? Big question. Does it energize their base, or is it going to alienate people? It's risky.
Speaking of risks, how about those music choices? Bon Iver playing patriotic songs in Wisconsin. Meg the Stallion in Atlanta. Even some DJ Khaled thrown in. That's not your average rally playlist.
It shows how campaigns are changing, right? Using pop culture to reach a wider audience, especially younger voters. It's more like a concert than a rally at times.
Makes you wonder if that's the whole point. It's not just the message anymore, it's the experience, the feeling they create.
You got it. Buzz. It's about generating buzz, and those musical guests definitely do that.
So we've got the no going back message, the weirdness tactic. What other approaches are they using?
Well, they play up Harris's background as a prosecutor a lot. But it's not just about her experience, they're telling a story with it.
Yeah, it's strategic, like she's building a case against Trump, but subtly.
Exactly. She'll say things like, as a prosecutor, I went after those who committed fraud. Then, later, mention Trump's fraud case.
Right. She uses specific words that relate to his legal issues. It's subtle, but it makes you think.
It's calculated. She's planting those seeds of doubt, but never directly accuses him.
Very clever. So it's Harris, the experienced prosecutor, versus Trump, who's always in legal trouble.
Exactly. It's all about how they frame it. They're shaping how you see them without directly attacking.
And then you've got Tim Walz, presented in a completely different way. It's always Coach Walz, focusing on him as a teacher, a football coach.
They're grafting this image of him,
Hmm.
one of us. They even talk about him supervising the school lunchroom, like it shows his work ethic.
He can handle anything, right?
Exactly. Little details that make him relatable, a regular, hard-working guy.
It plays into that contrast they're building between Harris Walz and Trump fans. Experienced versus privileged, everyday people versus the out-of-touch elite.
It's not just the big picture. They use very specific details, like Governor Walz talking about his experience with IVF, trying to connect with voters on a personal level.
Interesting. Is that vulnerability a strategy, or is it genuine? More importantly, do voters care?
Tough to say. But these days, everyone wants authenticity. These personal stories, they make politicians seem more relatable, more human. Could be effective.
Speaking of relatable, did you notice all the food references? Custard and cheese curds in Wisconsin, soul food and peach cobbler in Atlanta?
Oh, yeah. Food is powerful. It's cultural. By mentioning local specialties, they're showing they understand different parts of the country.
We're part of your community, that's the message.
Exactly. That feeling of shared experience, of belonging, it's crucial in politics, especially now when things feel so divided.
It's those little things, isn't it? The food, the stories, the music. It all influences how voters see these candidates.
Totally. It's not just about the issues anymore. It's image, it's storytelling, it's persuasion.
We've covered a lot, but we're just getting started. Let's dig into some key themes that emerge from these rallies, starting with how much they focus on the middle class.
Honestly, it's kind of surprising how many times they say middle class in these speeches. It's clearly their main strategy.
Totally. It's all about working families, economic security, building opportunity. They're going for a broad appeal, especially with people who are struggling financially.
Makes sense, especially now with the economy the way it is.
Right.
People are worried about inflation, jobs, what their kids' future is going to look like. The Harris campaign is tapping into that, but also trying to offer solutions.
And they get specific about it too. Targeted tax cuts for the middle class, affordable housing, investing in American manufacturing. It's not just vague promises, they have actual plans.
Exactly. They're crafting an economic message that resonates. They want to be seen as the party of opportunity, the opposite of what they're saying the Trump-Vance agenda is, which is favoring the wealthy.
And that's where those personal stories come in again. The teacher who benefited from student loan forgiveness, the farmer struggling because of trade wars. It makes these economic issues real, relatable.
For sure. It's not just numbers and statistics anymore. It's about the teacher trying to pay their bills, the farmer worried their kids won't inherit the family business. That's something people connect with.
And they keep making that contrast with Trump and Vance. They call them out of touch, even use the term country club Republicans a few times.
Smart move. They're
Yeah.
tapping into that class resentment. We're on your side. That's the message. But they're also pointing to real actions like the student loan forgiveness to back it up.
It's classic, right? Take action that benefits a lot of voters. Then when it's time to vote, remind them who came through for them.
Exactly. And speaking of taking action, it's interesting how Harris presents herself. She really focuses on her record, especially on how she's always been a fighter.
We talked about the prosecutor angle before, but it goes deeper than that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's a whole narrative. She's not just saying, I was a prosecutor. She's highlighting times she went up against the powerful big banks, those predatory lending companies, and how she fought for the average person.
Yeah, you can practically hear her saying, I've been fighting for you all along. It ties into the whole we're not going back thing, but it also makes her seem more credible.
Exactly. And she isn't afraid to compare her record to Trump's. There are moments where she mentions her work as a prosecutor, then brings up his legal problems, without actually saying his name.
It's subtle, but you get the point. Like when she says, as a prosecutor, I went after people who committed fraud. We all know who she means.
It's masterful. She's making people question him, making them doubt him, without getting into a mudslinging contest.
Like she's saying, I'm the responsible one here. I'm the one you can trust. And she says it so calmly, so confidently. It's really effective.
It projects competence, stability, which is what a lot of voters want, especially now with everything going on.
It's not just about their policies, it's about how they present themselves. The Harris campaign is really careful about the image they're putting out there, both for her and Walz.
And speaking of Walz, did you notice how they always bring up his military service, particularly in those rallies in more conservative areas?
Definitely. They really play up his time in the National Guard, especially in places where Democrats are seen as too liberal.
It's a strategic move. Military service carries weight, especially with certain voters. It lets them tap into patriotism, this idea of he's served his country, he understands what duty means.
Right, and they connect it back to his character. The discipline, the responsibility, the commitment. It all builds on that Coach Walz image, the guy who gets things done.
It's all about knowing your audience. They understand that different messages resonate in different places, and they adapt their approach accordingly.
It's amazing how these little details, like where someone grew up or what kind of summer job they had, can become part of a bigger political story.
Like with Harris's family background. They never miss a chance to mention her being raised by immigrants, emphasizing the whole American dream aspect. It's a way to connect with working-class voters, to show them she gets it, she's lived it.
They talk about her mom working multiple jobs, Kamala having a summer job at McDonald's. It's not by accident.
Exactly. They want to create empathy to show she's not some out-of-touch elite. And it connects to the bigger picture, this theme of diversity and inclusion, which is central to their whole campaign.
Right. They're presenting her as a symbol of how America is changing, the idea that anyone can succeed, no matter where they come from.
And it's not just words. They make sure the crowds at these rallies are diverse, so that you see this image of an inclusive America.
It's powerful. It's like they're saying, this is the real America. This is who we are. And there's this energy, this feeling of celebration.
It reminds us that politics isn't just about winning elections. It's about how people see the world, offering them a vision of the future that they can believe in.
And sometimes it's about scaring them a little with a different vision of the future. Which brings us to that thing nobody wants to talk about, Project 2025. How are they handling this supposed plan from Trump and his allies?
It's wild how they use Project 2025, this supposed plan. They make it like a scary movie, and Trump is the bad guy.
They definitely play up the fear angle, dismantling progress, harming the middle class, that kind of thing, but they can't go too far, can they?
True. You got to find that balance. Fear gets people motivated to vote, especially your base. But overdo it, and people just shut down. The Harris campaign needs to keep those middle-of-the-road voters, the undecided ones, engaged. Can't scare them off.
It's a tough line to walk, right? Worried enough to vote, but not too worried to care. And they're smart about it. They tie Project 2025 to stuff that impacts people directly.
Right. Pocketbook issues, healthcare costs, taxes, that sort of thing.
Right.
They talk about threats to Social Security and Medicare because it's one thing to hear about some vague plan, but then they make it real. Like, what if your retirement is at risk?
Suddenly it hits home, and that's when they bring in those personal stories again. Like, they'll talk about some senior struggling to afford medication, then bam, Project 2025 could make that even worse.
Classic storytelling. Build empathy with the personal touch, then raise the stakes. By the time they mention Project 2025, it's not some abstract idea anymore. It's a threat to someone you almost feel like you know.
And it's not all doom and gloom. They also talk about the good things that have happened under Biden.
Of course. Got to offer some hope, right?
Yeah.
Show that things can get better. But also a reminder of what they could lose if they don't vote.
Exactly. They talk about unemployment going down, the infrastructure stuff, that Inflation Reduction Act they passed. It's like, we're making progress, but it's not guaranteed. Don't let them take it away.
Powerful message. Especially when they frame it as this battle for the soul of America, which they say a lot.
Yeah, that's not an accident, that phrase. It's tapping into something deeper. It's not just about politics, it's about values, who we are.
They're drawing a line. This is about right and wrong, not just Republicans and Democrats.
And that can be really motivating for those voters who are still on the fence.
Absolutely. It makes it feel urgent, like this election is about something bigger.
And that's what makes these rallies so interesting. We see how the Harris campaign wants to get people to vote. We also see what Americans are worried about, what they want.
It's like a snapshot of the country right now, all those hopes and fears, the things we agree and disagree on.
So it all comes down to the voters, right? What resonates with them, what message speaks to their own lives.
That's what we want you to think about. We've given you the tools, a way to understand what's behind those speeches, the music, even the food. Now it's your turn to decide what it all means.
Exactly. What stood out to you? What arguments did you find convincing? What does this tell you about where American politics are at right now? It's a lot to unpack.
It is. And we hope these conversations continue long after you finish listening, because the most important discussions are the ones we have with ourselves and with each other.